Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Nate Thurston. Across from me is Mr. Charles Chuck Thompson, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee, live right now. How's it going today, Chuck?
It's a good thing someone with the character of Donald Trump does not have the keys to the presidency.
Yes.
Because you'd be in jail.
You'd be in jail. Someone's going to jail. That's what this is called.
Wish we had that clip up. I should have told you before.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't think she's going to jail, but I think someone could end up going to jail, especially if they release a few more documents. Tulsi said there are like thousands of documents on her desk, and so if she releases a few more of those, we might actually get someone going to jail, and they're going to deserve it. We're going to go through this newly released information that Tulsi put out this morning.
By the way, what I referenced was the Hillary Clinton Trump debate for everybody listening if you're new here.
Yeah.
One of the greatest lines in debate history.
It was really good. Mm-hmm.
Because you'd be in jail.
He didn't put her in jail.
No.
So,
but he could have.
That's too bad.
But it looks like he's going to go after
Obama,
the administration she worked for.
Brennan
she
Clapper,
was Secretary of State.
Some other people are going to be gone after. And from what I read this morning, which was the 46-page House Intel Committee report that was released by DNI Tulsi Gabbard, someone needs to go to jail. I've actually had my mind blown by what I read in this thing. And before we like really dive into it, I just want to stress how important like the baseline key foundation assumption of the Russia-Trump collusion narrative was in 2016 and 17 and 18 and 19, and even in the 2020 election, and even in the 2024 election by a lot of people who just wouldn't let the thing go away. The absolute foundational baseline of this has always been that Russia was trying to get Trump elected. Russia wanted Trump to be elected president. It's so foundational and so assumed that even we said it on yesterday's episode that like, yeah, okay, they tried to hack stuff. They weren't successful. They didn't change any vote totals, even though a lot of people ran with that idea. But, you know, we do know that they were at least trying to get Trump elected. Like we said this yesterday on the episode. And Tulsi released the information today, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you know what we're going to talk about. That is not true, which is tough to believe because it's become so ingrained in everyone's minds, even us who know about the Russia hoax. And we know about that. I still thought that it was clear, that there was clear evidence that Russia was trying to get Trump elected, that he was their preferred candidate.
That they at least had some bots or something.
Well, they did have that, but there's a reason behind it that just no one was told what the reason was. And this entire narrative of Russia trying to get Trump elected was based on a fragment of one sentence from an unknown source. And that is the only bit of evidence that they have that Russia wanted to get Trump elected. While at the same time, they have mountains of evidence that they were actually wanted Clinton elected. That they were actually just planning for Clinton getting elected and getting blackmail on her with the DNC server leaks, stuff like that. That they were trying to undermine her presidency before she took office. And that they actually wanted her elected because they thought they had more stuff to hold over her head. And some of that stuff has been going around on X, health issues, stuff like that. It's just wild. Like, people still bring this up, this idea that Trump is this Russian asset. And it comes from the Russia collusion hoax narrative that Trump is this Russian asset. And like, even if you're like on the left or you're someone who believes this and you accept the fact that sure, they tried to hack our elections, but they failed. They didn't manipulate any vote totals. Or sure, they posted anti-Clinton memes from bot accounts on social media, but it didn't really affect the election. Still, the idea that they wanted Trump to win creates like this baseline assumption about Donald Trump. And that comes into everything. It comes into the Ukraine situation.
He's Putin's puppet.
He's Putin's puppet, and that has driven so many other conversations. Like I said,
he's friends with an enemy of the United States.
And the only reason that I can come up with that we went so full on defending Ukraine from Russia. Remember, Russia took Crimea while Obama was the president.
In 2014.
We didn't do anything about it. We didn't send a whole bunch of military aid to Ukraine for them to fight back and take Crimea back from Russia or anything like that. We didn't do that. No one cared. No one cared at all. It was like a news thing that we talked about for maybe 2 days back in that time. No one cared. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, you see, by that time, Russia was Trump. And so for people on the left, for people that were Democrats, it was an opportunity to stop this evil dictatorship who had installed an evil puppet over us for the period of 2017, 18, 19, and 20 that we had to deal with, as this dictator Trump. And so we had to fight back against them to protect democracy. I don't think we would have done that if it weren't for the entire Russia collusion hoax. In fact, the war might not have even happened. Can you imagine you're another government and you've got all these news, this narrative that Russia is this evil actor who subverted our election process and put in this person that we all, that so many people hated and all that. And imagine you're sitting there thinking like, we didn't really do that. Actually, we wanted Clinton to win the election. This is crazy, but they're whipping up like half their population to hate our country right now. And so then
it's all Fugazi.
And the whole thing is Fugazi.
It's fairy dust. It's all made up and the points don't matter.
You just have to...
And what Nate is saying, by the way, you have to think back, if you're old enough to remember. Literally for 4 solid years, this is like all you heard about until COVID.
Yeah.
Like until COVID happened, this was it. This was the top news story. It was Russia. It was collusion. It was bribery with Ukraine. They impeached him for that. It was a constant attack. And there are clips out there that's just Russia, 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 new information, Russia, intelligence. We've all signed off. Everyone believes this. It was all fucking made up.
And so
unless, devil's advocate, I'll go with someone from the live group here. This was cooked up by the Trump administration.
It would be
you
weird.
Always leaving out.
It would be weird because the date on this report was in 2020. It was in September of 2020. And this is a House Intel Committee
Still Trump's
report.
Administration.
Why didn't they release it?
I don't know.
Like, it seems like you would have wanted to release that immediately after all that information came out if they went through all the pains of cooking up this whole thing.
Maybe he thought, well, why? You would think that he would release it immediately because that would help him win the 2020 election.
Yeah, he probably assumed he was going to win and maybe release it afterwards. Could have been part of that.
He's playing the long game.
I don't buy into that devil's advocate. It's always nice to do devil's advocate, which
I don't either.
Yeah, which the intelligence community should have done during this process. We'll show you they didn't devil's advocate anything when it came to this narrative. In fact, they just they found evidence for the conclusion that they wanted to present to people. That is exactly what they did. So, given the fact
this is a conspiracy theorist delight.
And what's great about this is you get some evidence. I still question, like, why are we just getting this now? Why was this report done by the House Intel Committee? Why did
because this
happen?
Erodes the confidence of America.
It does.
This erodes the confidence of the greatest power in the world.
It erodes confidence.
It erodes the reality that they've created, this thing they've made up, that justice is served and everything's on the up and up, and this intelligence works together to protect the American people. No, it turns out it looks like they work together to justify the means or the ends in which the powerful elite want something to go.
It's
and it's something conspiracy theorists have always been like, yeah, look, George Carlin talked about this in the 80s. It's a big club and you're not in it.
I've been wanting to post that clip lately, actually.
All that's true.
This whole thing shows you that the Democrats, now Trump is not perfect. We've had plenty of problems with Trump and we talk about them, and that probably makes people upset when we do that. It shows that the Democrats were actually involved in doing everything that they've accused Trump of doing. this whole time.
Which we highlighted.
Which is probably where they got the idea, because that's what projection is.
Yes.
And that's what they decided to accuse him of doing.
Usually what someone is accusing you of doing, they're doing themselves.
Yeah. The evidence that Tulsi Gabbard Declassified released today shows that it was the Democrats in the Obama administration actually trying to subvert the democratic outcome of an election. And that is what they tried to do, and maybe somewhat did, because it affected the president for years afterwards.
And it also probably led to him losing in 2020.
Yeah. And this is bigger than, like, we got the the Durham report, and we found out about the Steele dossier. Like, we knew the Steele dossier was made up. Eventually, we found out that all that stuff was made up. And it was paid for by the Clinton campaign and Fusion GPS and all this stuff, the DNC, Fusion GPS, and Christopher Steele, British agent, stuff like that. We found out about that. I had not seen the evidence that the entire narrative, found all the way down to the foundation of Russia wanting Trump to win the election, was actually fake.
Until this morning. Yeah.
That's when I read it. And so if you're on the same page with me, that you made that baseline assumption of, like, yeah, they didn't do it, but they wanted Trump to win the election, it's not true. It's pretty wild, actually. I love finding out that I was wrong about an assumption that I have. I love doing it. And so this is actually really exciting for me.
And when the tinfoil hats are right.
Oh, yeah. It's fun. So Tulsi Gabbard's post says, new evidence has emerged of the most egregious weaponization and politicization of intelligence in American history. Per President Donald Trump's directive, I have declassified a House Intel Oversight Majority Staff report that exposes how the Obama administration manufactured the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting the lie that Vladimir Putin and the Russian government helped President Trump win the 2016 election. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people, working with their partners in the media to promote the lie in order to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump, essentially enacting a years-long coup against him. And then she posts a link to this. And once again, a great graphic, just a wonderful graphic right here, which we're not going to go through because we have 94 slides of information that we are about to go through right now. So here's the cover: oversight investigation and referral, 18 September 2020. I would have liked this information sooner. I just want to come right out and say it.
It's almost 5 years too late.
I would have loved to have this information sooner. That would have been important for everyone. So the beginning of the report starts with sort of their assessment. You know, it's like an overview and your executive summary, because the executive doesn't want to look through all this stuff. Like, just tell me the important stuff that I need to know. Okay. So the intelligence community assessment, that centered around a lot of what we talked about yesterday, and that information that Tulsi released on last Friday, where Obama had directed them to do basically this new ICA, intelligence community assessment, this new ICA using all the information, as they're going to put it in here, and not their initial key findings that they have presented. Eventually, they need to go back and do it better. And by better, they meant make up a whole bunch of stuff to try and take down Trump's presidency. Okay. Most ICA judgments on Russia's activities in the U.S. election employed proper analytic tradecraft and were consistent with observed Russian behavior. The key judgments found to be credible include, number one, President Putin ordered conventional and cyber influence operations, notably by leaking politically sensitive emails obtained from computer intrusions. 2, Putin's principal motivations in these operations were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process and to weaken what the Russians considered to be an inevitable Clinton presidency. And 3, Putin held back leaking some compromising material for post-election use against the expected Clinton administration. And so some of that stuff they held back, we actually get some information on in this report, and it's fun. It's fun stuff because we get to know what they knew. The director of the CIA, after this, we will call that DCIA, director of the CIA, ordered the post-election publication of 15 reports containing previously collected but unpublished intelligence, 3 of which were substandard, containing information that was unclear, of uncertain origin, potentially biased, or implausible. And those became foundational sources for the ICA judgments that Putin preferred Trump over Clinton. The ICA misrepresented these reports as reliable without mentioning their significant underlying flaws. One scant, unclear, and unverifiable fragment of one sentence from one of the substandard reports constitutes the only classified information cited to suggest Putin aspired to help Trump win the election. The ICA ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence reports that challenged and in some cases undermined judgments that Putin sought to elect Trump. Not only did they
fiddled with it.
Not only did they essentially have no evidence that Putin wanted Trump to win, they have a ton of evidence that he didn't want Trump to win and that they expected that Clinton was going to win and that they wanted to have all this stuff to hold over her head so they could get pro-Russia things from the administration.
Mm-hmm.
That they left all of that out of the intelligence community assessment.
Also, Epstein who? You know?
You just had to mention it.
Well, yeah, I know we were done talking about it, but I mean,
right now, today, this is a big enough one that I'll give in and just talk about this today.
Until Congress comes back from recess.
And then we'll talk. Then we'll go heavy on
then
heavy
we'll
in the paint.
Okay.
Well, as we discussed yesterday, we have to keep mentioning Epstein so they release more of this stuff.
By the way, if they're willing to do this, you don't think they're willing to protect pedophiles and hold that over their head?
Yeah.
You know?
Of course.
If they're willing to, they're literally, what Tulsi Gabbard has released is that our own intelligence agency is willing to conceal, blackmail, fiddle with the narrative to usher in what they think is appropriate and also other countries as well, and then utilize that blackmail to achieve their objectives, the deep state and other countries' objectives.
Yeah.
So that really the president has no power. They're actually a puppet. This is wild.
Yeah. This
is so wild.
Let me get to, you'll have to bear with me today. We do have 94 slides here, and I think most of the information here is super important. Russian efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election represent the most recent expression of Moscow's longstanding desire to undermine the U.S. liberal democratic order. Russian intelligence services, acting on the orders of Russian President Vladimir Putin, launched conventional and cyber influence operations, notably by leaking politically sensitive emails obtained from computer intrusions during the 2016 election. Putin's principal motivations in these influence operations were to advance Moscow's long-standing desire to undermine faith in U.S. democracy and to weaken from the start what Russians considered to be an inevitable Clinton presidency.
Oh, they believe the polls.
Putin held back leaking some compromising material to use against the expected Clinton administration after they took office.
Which was Bill Clinton on Epstein's plane?
No, it was, they thought Clinton was going to beat Trump.
Okay.
Significant tradecraft failings cast doubt on the ICA judgment of Putin's intentions. So essentially in this report, what they're doing is they're trying to make sure the CIA and the FBI and all the intelligence agencies that they did their job correctly. And they have got these rules, the government just loves to have like these rules and codes and all these stuff that you have to go by, and make sure that you properly did your investigations and that you properly presented your evidence and that you didn't withhold anything, that you gave people an accurate picture. And essentially the House Intel Oversight people, they come in and make sure that that's what they did. Now, unfortunately,
it's all up to snuff.
Like, it's great that they do that. It's great they do that. What's weird in the scenario is that they found that the intelligence agencies clearly failed to do their job properly. And in fact, they lied to the American people, and then they just didn't tell anyone about it. So, like, what's the point of the oversight?
Yeah.
Like, it's great that we have this oversight for the intel community. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, 5 years ago, they found out all this terrible stuff the intelligence community did, and no one heard about it.
They just sat on it.
So what's the point?
That's because you have the government overseeing government.
Yeah.
Nate.
It'd just be too damaging to government to release the bad stuff the government did. In contrast to the ICA's other judgments, the sections addressing Putin's intentions for influencing the U.S. election did not observe professional criteria set forth in ICD 203 analytic standards. So they have, as I was saying, they have standards for how they do their analysis. We're going to maybe mention ICD 203 a couple times, just so you know. There's got like a code book of rules for their employees to go about doing their job properly, and ICD 203 is one of these things. These failures were serious enough to call into question judgments that allege Putin developed a clear preference for candidate Trump and aspired to help his chances of victory, and that Russian leaders never entirely abandoned hope for a defeat of Secretary Clinton. The ICA defined these as high-confidence judgments based on a body of reporting from multiple sources. It was not. We found out it was a half a sentence of reporting from an unknown source, and that was it. So they kind of just lined out that they have high confidence in these, that the Russian government developed a clear preference for candidate Trump. They have high confidence that Putin and the Russian government aspired to help Trump's chances of victory when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton, and that they never abandoned hope for the defeat of Secretary Clinton. Those lines will be important later. They go through what they did wrong, according to ICD 203, like they didn't properly describe quality and credibility of underlying sources, properly express and explain uncertainties associated with major analytic judgments, base confidence assessments on the quantity and quality of source material. Basically, all these things they violated in presenting this information to the president, administration, to Congress, and eventually to the American people, mainly through leaks with their buddies in the news media.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike routine IC analysis, the ICA was a high-profile product ordered by the president, directed by senior IC agency heads, and created by just 5 CIA analysts using one principal drafter. Later on, they go on to explain, just so you know, that those 5 CIA analysts had been compartmentalized, separated from each other, for them to just work on their own little separate piece, and they didn't really know what they were working on. They just sold like a type up what this information says. Doesn't matter, credible, not credible, whatever. Type up what this information says. And
one person to them put all that together.
One person put it all together, and then they presented that to the highest level of authority in the land, and these people later come back and say, we cannot believe that was presented to people in an ICA. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's a violation.
Production of the ICA was subject to unusual directives from the president and senior political appointees, in particular the DCIA, director of the CIA. The draft was not properly coordinated within CIA or the IC, ensuring it would be published without significant challenges to its conclusions.
Which is one of the checks and balances on these types of things.
Like if they were all working on it together and you're asking all these departments and stuff to put this thing together and we're going to workshop this whole this ICA that we're going to present, then many people would have had the opportunity to come forward and say, this is not right. They can't be putting this in there. But instead they compartmentalized the whole thing. They didn't tell them really what it was even for, and then put it together with no one in the CIA except for those 5 people knowing that they were even working on that information for this thing at all. And so no one could come forward and say, well, that's not correct. We can't do that. We got to put a stop to this. Key classified reports cited by the ICA in support of judgments that Putin developed a clear preference for candidate Trump and aspired to help his chances of victory contain flaws in terms of clarity or reliability. The ICA omitted or obscured such information from context statements that the CIA's Directorate of Operations had properly added to raw human source intelligence, or HUMINT, reports, thus failing to warn the reader of significant flaws in the quality or credibility of foundational sources. Okay.
Lies by omission.
Yes.
And crafted.
Yes. They did not,
for a particular narrative,
adequately. They didn't tell people at all that some of these things were in question. Mm-hmm. They just presented them all as fact. Okay. DCIA ordered the publication of 3 reports which failed to meet CIA criteria for reliability or clarity, that subsequently became key ICA citations on Putin's intentions. Let's see. Let's go through here. We already talked about the 15 3 of them being substandard. We got that. Most of the 15 were unremarkable, but 3 contained flawed information, and these 3 became foundational sources the ICA cited to claim Putin aspired to help Trump win. The 3 substandard flawed information ones became foundational for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Give me your worst ones.
Yeah.
Give me your worst ones. That's our foundation.
Senior CIA officers said some of the information in these reports have been judged to have not met various IC standards for publication. That's why they had not been published when first acquired. 2 sensitive reports were not published on DCIA's orders. The 3 reports were published after the election on DCIA's orders, despite veteran CIA officer judgments that they contained substandard information that was unclear, uncertain origin, potentially biased, implausible, or in the words of senior operations officers, odd.
This was
so
very odd.
The point, and there's going to be something pretty crazy at the end of this if you guys can hang through us basically reading a boring 46-page report to you guys.
I'm trying to make it fun.
Yeah, I see that. So there's going to be something pretty crazy, which is that they had given a report the day before the election on Russia's actions in the election, like that they had gathered so far. And in that report, they said nothing about Russia trying to help Trump win at all.
Until Trump won.
Even though later they go back to information that they already had at this time. They'd already gathered this months before. They didn't think it was important at all. They said nothing about Russia trying to help Trump win. In fact, all they reported was that Russia had some blackmail, some dirt on Clinton that they planned on using against Clinton after she won the election. They actually said in their report the day before the election what they eventually omitted from the final report as the basis of Russia's actions in the election. They left that entire narrative out, even though it was actually their conclusion the day before the election that that's what they were doing.
So wild.
Like, I'll
not
read
even
it to you.
it's not even believable.
I know. It's wild. It's
not
very
even
wild.
It's hardly believable.
The super important part about this, maybe someone's going to go to prison. As we know, like I said, someone's going to go to prison. Statistically not. Statistically, someone's not going to go to prison. We all understand that. Someone's going to have, each one of the higher level people are probably going to have some kind of plausible deniability. Like they were just listening to what the guy under them said. Are we going to get the email? We'll see. Maybe she'll release it. Are we going to get the email that says, yeah, we know this is made up, but we want to go ahead and screw Trump's presidency over and try to coup him and try to destroy any chance he has at being successful. And we would like to paint the narrative that he is a Russian plant, even though we've got plenty of evidence that that's not the case. Actually, almost all of our evidence says that. But we'd like you to go ahead and type up a report that says that this is the case in order to damage Trump.
This says it was at the president's directive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where's that evidence?
I would like to see that.
That's yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's phase 3.
Yeah. One scant, unclear, and unverifiable fragment of a sentence from a single human intel report published under Brennan's December 2016 order constitutes the only classified information cited by the ICA for the judgment that Putin aspired to help Trump's chances of victory when possible. The ICA did not cite any report where Putin directly indicated helping Trump win was the objective. That judgment rested on a questionable interpretation of one unclear fragment of one sentence.
Where's the sentence?
The unclear fragment, shown in bold, is part of a sentence in a redacted that reads, quote, Putin had made this decision to leak the DNC emails after he had come to believe that the Democratic nominee had better odds of winning the U.S. presidential election and that Trump, whose victory Putin was counting on, most likely would not be able to pull off a convincing victory. Later, you will find out. Now, he just said, had come to believe that the Democratic nominee had better odds of winning the presidential election, and that Trump, whose victory Putin was counting on, most likely would not be able to pull off a convincing victory. What you'll find out is that that statement had been entered into their evidence 2 weeks before the Republican convention where Trump won the primary and became the Republican nominee. And so they said the flip side of this argument, or whose victory Putin was counting on, was that he was saying they're planning on Trump being the Republican nominee.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that he would not be able to win a victory against Clinton, basically.
And then also here, 5 people read it 5 ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 5 different people read it, 5 different interpretations.
A senior CIA operations officer said of the fragment, "We don't know what was meant by that," and 5 people read it 5 ways. The significance of this fragment to the ICA case that Putin aspired for candidate Trump cannot be overstated. The major, high-confidence judgment of the ICA rests on one opinion about a text fragment with uncertain meaning that may be a garble and for which it is not clear how it was obtained. This text, which would not have been published without DCIA's orders to do so, is cited using only one interpretation of its meaning and without considering alternative interpretations. The report containing the fragment did not directly say or imply that Putin developed a preference for Trump, nor did it say Putin ordered his intelligence services to assist Trump's chances of victory. The ICA presented only one interpretation of the unclear fragment. It does so without following ICD 203 directives to properly distinguish between underlying intelligence information and analysts' assumptions and judgments, just in case you guys want to go back and read that section of ICD 203. Just let you all know.
Just in case you want to be, in intelligence, you gotta mostly adhere to these principles, I guess. Throw them out the window when it doesn't suit you. But we got the policies there just in case.
We're going to keep talking about the ICA because the ICA is so important. The ICA is the thing that Obama ordered them. They had one prepared, and they're like, no, we want you guys to redo this thing. We want you guys to redo this ICA. Okay. So then they present this new ICA later on to Obama. And then that is leaked to the press also. And so that's why this thing, this origin, this really big intelligence community origin story for the Trump-Russia collusion hoax is super important. That's why we're going to keep talking about the ICA and how it was put together because it's sort of ground zero on a bunch of this stuff. The ICA judgment on Putin's thoughts about helping candidate Trump does not stand if the single interpretation of the fragment is wrong, because there is no other intelligence corroborating it, and in any case, viable, perhaps more likely alternative interpretations of the fragment exist. None of the confirmed Russian activities, leaks, public statements, social media messaging, and traditional propaganda corroborate the interpretation of the fragment, because these activities were all consistent with Putin's objectives to undermine faith in U.S. democracy, without regard for candidate Trump's fate.
In other words, Putin and what his directives were is like, I don't really care. I just want to undermine the process to show that, the United States is a little bitch compared to Russia.
Putin was doing like what we do with the USAID and the CIA in like 100 other countries around the world.
Yeah.
Like that's what he was, trying to do.
He learned it from the best.
So... let's see.
I see what the United States is doing. Let's do it over here.
CIA officers in the component running Russia operations described how 2 versions of the report, one without the fragment and one with, were published as the ICA was being written. Experienced CIA officers responsible for reporting evaluated the human intel reporting means, the threshold for publication, initially omitted the confusing fragment from the first version of the report, which was published on the 20th of December 2016. The director of the CIA countermanded their decision, however, in order that the fragment be included so that it could be cited in the intelligence community assessment. A revised report was published on the 28th of December 2016. A senior CIA operations officer described concerns about relying upon unclear reporting as the only evidence for the significant judgment that Putin aspired to help Trump. The officer explained that while most of the ICA was well done, ideally, they should have eliminated the political judgment because the fragment lacked clarity. The same officer said that together with another senior colleague, the 2 officers argued to the director of the CIA that we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected, and therefore the judgment that Putin was doing this should be removed from the ICA. So they didn't listen to what those guys wanted to do.
No.
Just in case you guys were wondering. Okay. Let me see here. The source did not say that President Putin preferred candidate Trump or that he wanted to help him win. It is not known how the subsource obtained the information, and thus whether the fragment reflected the subsource's opinion of Putin's inner thoughts, Putin's actual statements made to the subsource, or some third person's opinions relayed to the subsource, who then relayed these to the established source, meaning they don't know where that statement even came from, even if it was real. Even if that statement did mean what they said it meant, they didn't even know where it came from or if it even happened.
In fact, Putin doesn't even use the word whose.
No, he doesn't say that kind of stuff.
So
at all. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
At it. Let's see. The ICA also fails to consider alternative, more plausible explanations for the fragment's meaning suggested by the context of events during early July. The fragment could instead be read that Putin counted on a Trump victory at the Republican convention, which was only 2 weeks away at the time of Putin's WikiLeaks decision. Okay, so now we get to something that they actually did here. D&I Clapper comments on ICA's citation. He says, I have reviewed the underlying source material myself and entirely concur in the judgment of the analysts, which I believe is consistent with the standards of analytical tradecraft and objectivity.
And you can trust this guy. He never lies.
No, Clapper would never. Clapper would never lie.
No, this guy he is integrity.
Yeah.
If you've ever, you look up a picture of integrity, James Clapper, I hope that guy goes to prison. If anyone goes down for this, maybe it should be Clapper.
He deserves it.
For all kinds of things.
For sure.
Yes.
Maybe
we'll bring Snowden home from Russia.
Yeah.
Could be a subsource. Who knows? And he'll come home. We'll put Clapper in jail. And we'll arrest all the pedophiles, and all will be right with the world.
That sounds exactly like what's going to happen.
What a
for
plan.
Sure. Missing from the intelligence community assessment was significant intelligence that, redacted, a longtime Putin confidant told a sensitive contact, redacted, that, redacted, quote, so missing from the intelligence community assessment was significant intelligence that a longtime Putin confidant told a contact that Putin told him he did not care who won the election. Quote, Putin had often outlined the weaknesses of both major candidates, and Putin asserted that in either case, quote, Russia was strategically placed to outmaneuver either one. So we
could beat either one.
These same statements who come from a third party or hearsay or whatever it is you want to call them were also in the same evidence folder for the other thing of Putin saying that they were counting on the Trump victory or whatever.
That were omitted.
That they did not put this in there. They did not leave any room for any alternative theory, which is, once again, I'm going to tell you, their alternative theory was actually their working theory the day before the election. That's what they thought was actually happening, is the alternative theory in this scenario. They eventually, because Trump won the election, they decided to go with the complete opposite theory that they had the day before the election. That's pretty wild. Pretty wild to me. Putin's ambivalence about the two candidates is further supported by, redacted, also omitted from the assessment, redacted. Putin's, redacted, made no positive mention of Trump. Instead, it revealed his pessimism that neither Trump nor Clinton would be able to correct the strained relationship. Although he indicated that there could be opportunities to gradually improve relations, he made clear that he didn't have a preference for either candidate. So they've actually got sources close to Putin, and they've got on numerous occasions talking about the election, and they've got no single time where Putin directly says that he wants Trump to win the election, ever. In fact, they've got many times of him saying, yeah, it doesn't matter who wins the election. I don't care who wins the election.
They both suck.
They both suck. I
Which
can
is what we
outmaneuver
all
both
were
of these
saying.
people. It doesn't matter at all. And what's interesting in here is that Putin is the one who is wanting to correct the strained relationship between Russia and the U.S. I thought he was this, he is a bad actor for sure, like everyone else who runs governments. A Russian redacted said Russia was planning for candidate Clinton's victory because they knew where she stood, and despite media stories, Russia could work with her, according to redacted, a collaborative source with excellent access, but whose reporting had not been corroborated. So that was also left out. Okay, not important to put that in there. The ICA focused on the pros of Russian attitudes towards Trump while ignoring the cons the Russians worried about in the event of a Trump victory. The Russian officials and America experts were thinking hard about all implications, including that a Trump win might keep the House and Senate in Republican hands and how that would be bad for Russia. So they only focused on the pros that Russia would see with Trump winning. They did not bring into their assessment any of the cons that Russia would see of Trump winning. It's very one-sided, very biased. I think we're making that point clear, for sure. Okay, by omitting the below evidence, the ICA denied the reader access to significant intelligence that undermines the major judgment that Putin preferred Trump. That undermines the judgment that Putin preferred Trump. Redacted warned senior officials that it is important to be mindful that those who would hold positions in a Trump administration, should he win, will likely adhere to conservative anti-Russian positions. Redacted worried that the implications of a Trump victory and an ability to maintain control over both the House and Senate are serious. Legislatively, a conservative victory would probably be a dead end for developing Russia-U.S. relations. Okay, so they didn't like that. Redacted made clear that he took exception to a favorable view of Trump. He cautioned that there was no basis for enthusiasm simply because Trump refrained from using anti-Russian and anti-Putin rhetoric. Redacted, Putin's redacted, specifically noted that it is unlikely Trump will be able to take steps to correct relations, while Redacted agreed that Trump was unlikely to win and would be unable to improve U.S.-Russia relations if he did. Far from showing a consensus of a clear preference for Trump, the evidence indicates Putin and Russian officials saw downsides to a potential Trump administration. The intelligence also showed that regardless of who won, Moscow expected a prolonged struggle to repair strained relations with Washington. Okay. Another thing that they ignored in this ICA was that Putin had all of this information on Clinton. You guys remember the DNC email leaks, and they'd hacked some stuff basically. It turns out they didn't release everything they had on Clinton. They released some stuff that they had on Clinton, but they were actually holding back and keeping all the juiciest stuff that there was for after Clinton won the election, so they could use it against her after she won the election. And so they make the argument that, well, if he was so concerned with Trump winning the election, why didn't he release all of this damning evidence about Hillary Clinton before the election?
Yeah, and Trump would have won in a landslide.
Yeah. So the ICA judged that Putin wanted to help Trump's chances of victory when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton, and that he never abandoned this objective. Yet, when the race evolved to the point that it became possible for Putin to help Trump win, the polls narrowed dramatically as Election Day approached. The ICA did not address why Putin chose not to leak more discrediting material on Clinton in order to help Trump's chances of victory. Why didn't they do that? If that was the thing they were trying to get there. Putin's got a puppet, right? Mm-hmm. His name's Trump, and you really want to get, Putin wants to get Putin's puppet in the office. Why would you hold back on all the information that you have? It's interesting. As the election entered decisive stages, Putin possessed proven low-risk cutout platforms for leaking documents via DCleaks.com, WikiLeaks, and
Gussifier?
Gussifer?
Gucci
2.0? I don't know. We're probably going to sound dumb for not knowing what this is, but I've never heard of that before. I don't know what that is. And an arsenal of material on Clinton. The SVR held particularly damaging information that likely would have created greater scandals than material already leaked by the GRU. CIA analysts confirmed that Moscow was receiving reports of U.S. election polling, so they knew that the polling was tightening and that they knew that they had this information. Let's see. The ICA says Moscow had additional information obtained from cyber collection against U.S. government and non-government targets, such as reports on Clinton's health, that it could have used against Clinton administrations, that says admirations, policies, and nominees based on redacted. We assessed that Moscow refrained from the full spectrum of actions it could have taken to affect the U.S. election. We judged that the Kremlin could have disclosed additional material. I want to get to some of this material because it's fun. Let's see. Here we go. As of September 2016, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, said Democratic National Committee information that President Obama and party leaders found the state of Secretary Clinton's health to be extraordinarily alarming and felt it could have serious negative impact on her election prospects. Her health information was being kept in the strictest secrecy, and even close advisors were not being fully informed.
We did see her basically have a stroke that one day.
She fell over.
Fell.
For sure. It was just heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
Dehydration, probably. The SVR possessed DNC communications that Clinton was suffering from intensified psycho-emotional problems, including uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness.
Oh, she's bipolar.
Oh, man, perfect opportunity for you to go, oh, she's a woman. Clinton was placed on a daily regimen.
Sounds like my ex.
Clinton was placed on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. And while afraid of losing, she remained obsessed with a thirst for power. The SVR also had information that Clinton suffered from type 2 diabetes, ischemic heart disease, deep vein thrombosis. Got to get that checked out. I think that could be pretty bad, you know. And chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Her heart was not doing well. Okay, basically pretty bad circulatory system. Not looking good.
Well, and she needs to check her blood sugar and check it often.
Yeah, she needed to.
She's got the diabetes.
The SVR possessed a campaign email discussing a plan approved by Secretary Clinton to link Putin and Russian hackers to candidate Trump in order to distract the American public from the Clinton email server scandal. So the SVR had an email, okay, a campaign email discussing a plan that had been approved by Clinton to link Putin and Russian hackers to candidate Trump so they could distract from her own email server scandal. They didn't release the evidence that they had about that plan. The FSB in August had details of secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which U.S. State Department representatives offered, in exchange for supporting Clinton, significant increases in financing from department funds and the patronage of state in dealing with post-Soviet countries.
Jesus Christ. That's a crime, is it not?
Oh,
we talk about how this bribery goes on, and here's just clear evidence.
Wow. And they had that evidence, and they didn't release it.
Yeah.
Before the election.
By the way, she's acting Secretary of State at this time. With control over the State Department.
Bribery going on, and they had evidence of it, and they didn't release it.
Which means U.S. intelligence had evidence of it.
Because they know that they had that information.
They know that you know that I know that we know.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing happened.
Nothing. Who cares?
Yeah.
FBI Director James.
By the way, all of you are pursuing the wrong careers.
Yeah.
If you want to protect yourself and your family, you go into government.
You got to get in government, man.
Because then you can do whatever the fuck you want.
That's where the money is.
And nothing happens.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happens. And all the while, they steal your money. They inflate your money away, and they do whatever they want. It looks like they bang children. They steal money and commit whatever crimes they want, all for power and status.
Yeah.
At the expense of you, by the way. It's at the expense of you.
If you want to hear
this is a zero-sum game.
If you want to hear great Charlie rants like that on a daily basis, go to Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. Just so everyone knows, we got 1,500.
getting warmed up.
1,597 episodes so far.
I'm getting heated now.
FBI Director James Comey.
It's getting hot in this room.
And the end of this thing is going to get fun.
Oh, no.
FBI Director James Comey testified to the committee that in August 2016, the SVR had DNC emails in which the head of the DNC was telling people that former Attorney General Lynch was working to control me and keeping a named member of the Clinton campaign informed on what the FBI was doing in the Clinton email investigation. Now, that was not worded very well, but let me tell you what it says. The director of the FBI got an email, testified to the committee in 2016 that the SVR had DNC emails in which the head of the DNC was telling people that the Attorney General was working to control the FBI director and keeping a named member of the Clinton campaign informed on what the FBI was doing in the Clinton email investigation, basically meaning that the FBI was colluding with the Clinton campaign to keep them informed about the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails.
Look, we're going to investigate you, but don't worry. We'll tell you everything we're doing while we're investigating you. By the way, being controlled probably through blackmail by the former Attorney General Lynch.
Yeah. The SVR reported in January 2016 that it had information taken from a U.S. think tank indicating that a high-ranking official at the DNC knew about the application of political pressure on the FBI in the Clinton email investigation by a high-ranking official of the U.S. Department of Justice. So that the DNC had information that they knew about the political pressure on the FBI by a high-ranking official of the U.S. Department of Justice, the FBI, the people that are investigating the Hillary Clinton email leaks at that time.
By the way, we just got breaking information, I think. This is from...
Someone get arrested?
Vigilante Fox. No, but Tulsi Gabbard took the mic at the White House briefing, and it looks like she dropped a nuclear bomb on Barack Obama, saying irrefutable evidence. So
let's get to
this just happening with... Tulsi.
Let's get to the breaking news here. Let me see if it shows up here at the top. Has anyone seen... Let's see here. There's a picture of Tulsi in there. Let's see. Looks like this might be it. Wait one. We're just going to do a little bit of breaking information here.
With the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford. Today we've released a declassified oversight majority staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice.
All right, there's that one.
I'm back on Team Trump.
There, it's a, let's see.
Unless he unseats, Thomas Massey. But of course, I never left. Nate did.
Let me get this.
And we'll continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Huh.
Okay.
Interesting.
So that should be pretty important there. Now, from what I can understand right now, from what I've seen so far, they have not released this direct evidence that they that Obama knowingly directed them to lie in order to create this. And I'm not saying that evidence doesn't exist, but as
we
you
don't
guys
have it yet.
Yeah, as you guys can see, I've read through this entire report, and that's not in there. They just say per the president's request or per the president's order. in order for like Obama to be implicated in this, there's going to have to be some evidence of, and to my knowledge, there's going to have to be some evidence of intent, provable intent to knowingly lie and create this fake narrative about Russia collusion, knowing that the information was likely incorrect or not up to their standards. Now, I see in there that they probably do have evidence, in my opinion, that the director of the CIA,
Brennan,
was that Brennan?
Yeah, John Brennan.
That the director of the CIA looks like they knowingly did some stuff. Now, I don't know if you can claim ignorance or whatever you could claim on that, like, hey, I'm just terrible at my job, what are you going to do? I won a popularity contest, the president appointed me to this position. I don't know if you can claim that or not, but as far as going up to Obama, I haven't seen that evidence that would actually get him like locked up yet. I definitely see evidence of him getting pulled in front of Congress for questioning, stuff like that. Man, I bet Biden's auto pen is really regretting not sending out pardons for Obama before this.
It's a real regret.
Whoever did that. All right, we're going to get back in. If anything else, any other really big clips come out of this, let us know, guys, in the group. I'm trying not to read every comment in the group because I'm trying to stay laser focused right here. And what's up to all the people hanging out with us on Twitter and all that too. Thanks for hanging out, or X. In March of 2016, the SVR had intercepted discussions between a high-ranking DNC official and a U.S. non-governmental organization, indicating that a Clinton staffer was receiving updates on the FBI's Clinton email investigation from a high-ranking Department of Justice official. So that kind of clears that up again, that for some reason, high-ranking DNC official and a U.S. NGO emailing back and forth that a Clinton staffer was receiving updates on the FBI. Probably like an NGO that was like worried about the whole thing, and they're like, "No, don't worry about it. Yeah. We got our guy in there telling us everything's going on.
It's
don't
fine.
Worry about
Everything
it.
ended up fine."
Yeah, that's it's not a big deal. Don't you worry about that. It's difficult to justify the ICA judgment that Putin aspired to help Trump win by discrediting Secretary Clinton, given that in the closing weeks of the campaign, when such devastating leaks could have been decisive, President Putin elected not to inject this material into the campaign. Let's see. Donald Trump's... Oh, there's another part. Why is it that they also leaked emails that were negative for Trump at the same time? That's interesting, too. GRU Associated DCLeaks.com in September 2016 leaked emails belonging to Colin Powell, the former Republican Secretary of State under George W. Bush, according to media reports and forensic information. In the leaked emails, Secretary Powell attacked the character of candidate Trump, saying Donald Trump is a national disgrace and an international pariah. All his lies and nonsense just pile up. I just go back to the unforgivable one, trying to destroy the president elected by the American people with his fictitious investigation into his source of birth. Absolutely disgraceful. That's the Obama birth certificate thing. Okay. Also, the other one saying Trump is taking on water. He doesn't have a GOP philosophy or even a conservative philosophy.
Might be precisely why he won, though.
Yeah.
So
these leaks were contrary to the ICA judgments about Putin's intentions to help Trump. Yet, instead of addressing the issue, the ICA only acknowledged that additional Russian compromises of U.S. systems occurred without tackling the significant implications of why Putin would want to hurt Trump. The ICA only notes that additional Russian compromises of U.S. systems may have occurred. That is all that they say. Okay. And then we get into the Steele dossier. So the important part about Steele dossier, first off, everyone listening right now, everyone hanging out knows that it was fake. Okay,
completely
this is something
fake.
that the DNC Clinton campaign came together, paid a company called Fusion GPS, get this British agent named Christopher Steele to compile this dossier and get it to the FBI, and it was just made up. Okay.
And we also saw previously that there were emails showing that they were trying to tie Trump to Russia anyway, and this obviously was part of it.
Now, what they also know is that they knew that this was a made-up dossier.
They made it up.
They knew they knew that Steele was not trustworthy. In fact, by this time he had been fired for lying. The agent had been fired for lying. Let me get to some of that. The ICA included a 2-page summary of a series of anti-Trump political opposition research reports, which have collectively come to be known as the Dossier in the media, that was produced on behalf of the DNC and the Clinton campaign by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele.
And by the way, I remember specifically talking to all the people who hated Trump during this campaign, and even while he was elected, that pointed back to this over and over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, what evidence do you have that he's a Putin puppet? Well, look at this. Look at this. Look at all this evidence they have against him. You know, they pointed to these specific things that they completely made up.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Now,
to think about.
I mean, yeah, it is.
It is insane.
It is pretty wild.
It hurts.
it's pretty wild to think about. Contradicting public claims by the director of the CIA that this dossier was not in any way incorporated into the ICA. The dossier was referenced in the ICA main body text and further detailed in a 2-page ICA annex. So later, the director of the CIA had made public claims that this dossier, which they had found, was fake, and everyone except okay, yeah, this is fake. This has been totally discredited. They said, well, this wasn't incorporated into the president's ICA that we gave to him, this intelligence community assessment. That wasn't incorporated in there anyway. Okay, well, turns out, like Tulsi showed us last Friday, yes, the hell it was.
It was
incorporated in the assessment.
Yes.
Okay. What the ICA says, the 4th bullet of evidence that Putin aspired to help Trump. And the CIA main body text, they might have meant ICA main body text. The key judgment, quote, we assess the influence campaign aspired to help Trump's chances of victory, was followed by 4 bullets of supporting evidence. The 4th bullet referred to the reader to a detailed summary and analysis of the Steele dossier. For additional reporting on Russian plans and intentions, please see Annex A. Additional reporting from an FBI source on Russian influence efforts. And then it referred people to the Steele dossier and this intelligence community assessment.
God. That they completely contradicted
Yeah.
and lied about.
By devoting nearly 2 pages of the ICA text to summarizing the dossier in a high-profile assessment intended for the president and president-elect, the ICA misrepresented both the significance and credibility of the dossier reports. The ICA referred to the dossier's Russian plans and intentions, falsely implying to high-level U.S. policymakers that the dossier had intelligence value for understanding Moscow's influence operations. Go through all kinds of stuff here about how they knew that this dossier was fake and that they had known that it was at least highly questionable, could not be relied upon whatsoever for sure at the time that they decided to go ahead and include it and make it like a 2-page part of this intelligence community assessment. They knew that it could not be relied upon.
Yeah, this is so funny here. It says the ICA sourcing errors involving the dossier violated so many of the ICD 203 directives, so many violations, that the text would normally not have even passed the first-line supervisor review at the CIA, FBI, or other IC agencies. It wouldn't even get. It wouldn't even get through the low-level,
They said, get this mess out of here.
basement janitor who reviews these first.
What are you doing? Are you trying to write a conspiracy book or something here? What is this BS you're throwing out here? 2 senior CIA officers, one from Russia operations and the other from Russia analysis, argue with the director that the dossier should not be included at all in the assessment because it failed to meet basic tradecraft standards, according to a senior officer present at the meeting. The same officer said that the director refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So for the director of the CIA to include this in the intelligence community's assessment, an officer said that he needed to remove it, pointed out all the flaws, and the director of the CIA said, yeah, but doesn't it sound true to you? And that's their standard right there. It's pretty
It
crazy.
feels true.
Feels.
I
like
feel
you
like
feel it in your heart.
Yeah,
This
how do you
is
know?
true.
How do you know Trump is
You know?
colluding with Russia? Well, I just feel it. Don't you feel it, man? I just feel it deep in my bones.
Echoing comments by CIA officers discussing the 3 substandard CIA human intel reports, the FBI senior analyst said that they were told by FBI leadership that all material, regardless of traditional sourcing standards, was to be made available in drafting the intelligence community assessment. Quote, our instructions were that anything we had was to be used. We were told to push this. When pressed to explain the decision, the analyst said that the FBI leadership decided it was the right thing to do, but that we were not able to verify it in the dossier. Okay. Basically got some more stuff here about the decision of how to handle this, jointly made by the directors of the CIA and FBI, who overruled the objections from CIA officers and agreed to reference it with the other ICA text bullets describing Putin's intentions. Okay. Let me get to... Yeah, there we go. There's a little bit more stuff about it. There's been so much stuff done on the Steele dossier. I'm just going to try to skip through here. Let's see. Now we're back to the Clinton damaging stuff. By keeping the most damaging material on Clinton in reserve, Putin was not only demonstrating a clear lack of concern for Trump's election fate, but conversely, his actions could also indicate that he preferred to see Secretary Clinton elected, knowing that she would be a more vulnerable president than candidate Trump. Moscow's reserve of compromising materials would have given Putin leverage over a Clinton administration, but not a Trump administration. And so they're showing that basically you're supposed to go through what are all the theories of why they are doing this thing. And they decided just to go with only one theory, which is that they were trying to help Trump get elected, essentially, which was backed up by basically nothing.
Which, by the way, wasn't even their theory until the day after the election.
Yeah.
Because the day before the election, this wasn't their theory.
Russian strategic plans appeared to prioritize post-election influence operations rather than aspiring to help Trump win the election. So these are the alternative theories for why would they be releasing some of this stuff. Omitted from the assessment provides more evidence that President Putin's priorities were not focused on election operations designed to help Trump win. Rather, his priorities appeared focused on post-election operations to undermine the credibility of the expected and possibly preferred Clinton administration, and on calling into question the fairness and effectiveness of the American democratic process. So what they're trying to do.
By the way, this is the assessment done by the House Intel Committee that oversees what they were doing. So this is them coming together and creating a report, being like, yeah, something doesn't add up here. You know, this doesn't make sense why they would do this. You know, other things they do make sense. This doesn't make sense.
Let me see here.
So, by the way, so
this strategic plan would only work if Secretary Clinton won the election and the reserve materials Moscow held on her would be leaked. A plausible explanation for, this is referencing back to something they said previously. Whatever. In this context, in conjunction with the media campaign Russian intelligence was preparing. Redacted made no mention, directly or indirectly, of operations to help candidate Trump win or to denigrate him after the election. The ICA indicated no evidence of similar damaging material being held by Moscow on candidate Trump, making him less vulnerable to such post-election influence operations than Secretary Clinton. So basically, they're going to show many times through here that it is much more plausible that they, in fact, wanted Clinton to win and that they have plenty of information to try and hurt her presidency or to use things as blackmail to hold over her head. And also that after the election took place and Clinton won the election, they wanted there to be unrest from Trump supporters and that the establishment always wins. We have an unfair election process. This is all stuff that's in there that I don't think I included all the screenshots, but they were wanting there to be unrest after it. These the deep state establishment candidates, they always win. We don't have fair elections. Everything's bought and paid for ahead of time. You don't really have a democratic voice. Your vote doesn't really matter. And these are things that they were trying to make happen after Clinton won the election. The other funny part was that after Trump won the election, they actually had Russia actually had anti-Trump rallies afterwards. And so that was pretty funny, too, that they actually provoked some of those. Let's see. This is just more stuff about how it's most likely that they were wanting to have control over Clinton afterwards. And then we're going to get to the timeline here. Let's see. No Putin orders directing or suggesting operations intended to elect Trump. By contrast, intelligence on Russian operations and German elections specifically mentioned Putin's goal of defeating Chancellor Merkel, meaning they had information when Russia was trying to affect the previous election, and they had clear evidence of him saying that he was trying to take out Angela Merkel in those elections. No observed Russian operations that could only be explained in the context of electing Trump, as opposed to efforts to undermine faith in U.S. democracy. No evidence of attempts to covertly transfer money to the Trump campaign or otherwise directly assist the campaign. No discussions or activities among subordinate authorities or tactical operators suggesting they were attempting to help Trump win or have received orders to do so. No indications of orders to not engage in activities that would damage candidate Trump, such as releasing the emails from Colin Powell that were critical of Trump's character. Okay, so we got all that stuff. Weakened democracy, okay. Okay. It further omitted key intelligence of Russian operations shortly after the election to organize anti-Trump rallies. After Trump's election, the Russians employed false U.S. Facebook personas to organize and coordinate rallies protesting the results of the 2016 election, according to indictment filed by Robert Mueller. In 2016, about 4 days after Trump's election, a Russian group organized a Trump is not my president rally in New York. A similar Russian organized rally occurred a week later in Charlotte, North Carolina.
I remember that.
So,
not my president.
Okay, let me get to the timeline here, and then we're going to wrap this stuff up. I think now we're getting to it. Yep, there we go. On the 6th of December, 2016, almost a month after the election, the president ordered the directors of CIA, FBI, and NSA to review their work to date on the Russian influence campaign and to quickly produce the ICA to include an unclassified version for release in early January, according to CIA officers involved in producing the ICA. By the 22nd of December, 16 days later, the director of the CIA was given the final draft for review. The ICA classified and unclassified versions were disseminated on the 5th and 6th of January 2017, 2 weeks before the inauguration of President Trump, suggesting that the rushed work schedule was driven by a political motivation to ensure the ICA was rolled out to the Congress and the world media by the outgoing administration, the Obama administration. By finishing the ICA before the new president was inaugurated, the outgoing director of the CIA retained total control over who could see the raw intelligence cited, who was allowed to review the draft, and what comments would be accepted or rejected. We've got plenty of, more intelligence officers objecting. Rushing the publication also allowed the outgoing CIA director to lead the briefings to Congress, where he could control the narrative. The 6th of November, election eve. 2 days before American voters cast their ballots for president, a 15-person multi-agency task force known as the Directors Fusion Cell transmitted its final memorandum on Russia's influence campaign to a select audience. The CIA director shared this memorandum exclusively with the White House, the DNI, and directors of NSA and FBI. The memo's authors enjoyed unique and privileged access to the most sensitive, compartmented intelligence, including reports withheld from the vast majority of the intelligence community. So the election eve memo made no mention of Putin aspiring for a Trump victory. Even as the U.S. polls showed the race to be close, the memo predicted Moscow would continue influence operations to undermine the legitimacy of the U.S. electoral process and degrade Secretary Clinton, whom Putin expected to win, and her presumptive administration. They would seek to publish material that would embarrass the incoming administration and cast doubt on their integrity. The memo concluded that such efforts would also support Putin's domestic claims that the U.S. is a corrupt, hypocritical, and undemocratic pretender to global leadership. So The memo's only mention of candidate Trump was to note that Putin did not care who wins the election, according to a close associate of the Russian president, and that Putin said he was prepared to outmaneuver whichever candidate wins. And so just before the election, they give their assessment and they say all of the what turns out to be alternative theories on why they were hacking information and releasing information about Clinton and about Trump and what their actions were. The theories that were never put into the intelligence community assessment, which is that they were trying to create the narrative undermining U.S. democracy, that they expected Hillary Clinton to win, and that they were trying to gather information, that they expected them to try and undermine her presidency and her integrity. And at the same time, they said Putin does not care who wins the election. Now, they've got all the information that's later used for the intelligence community assessment. But 2 days before the election, they say, yeah, he doesn't care who wins. On the 8th...
Isn't that the something?
That's special. On the 8th of November, Trump wins. The subsequent election... I guess it's after maybe. The subsequent election of Donald Trump was a big surprise in Moscow, as it was in D.C., based on embassy and media reporting. Back in the U.S., media pundits struggled to explain how the American voters had chosen an upstart political outsider over a veteran establishment politician. It says 5th of December, the House Intelligence Committee receives the first post-election classified briefing on Putin's campaign. The FBI's Director of Counterintelligence and the DNI's National Intelligence Officer led a classified briefing that described Putin's leak operations but made no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump. So that's still on the 5th of December. 6th of December. So now on the 6th of December, the president directed the intelligence community to review their work to date on the Russian influence campaign and quickly produce a new intelligence community assessment for release in early January before Trump took office. The ICA would rehash much of the previously published material on Russian activities, but would also include the judgment that President Putin aspired for Trump to win. CIA would be the lead drafter in coordination with FBI and NSA.
So where's the evidence of that? Where's the evidence of the president directing the intelligence community to redo this?
Yeah, we don't, we need that.
We need that email.
We need that part right there.
Or that phone call or something.
Mm-hmm. 5 CIA analysts wrote the intelligence community assessment, presenting the draft to the director of the CIA by the 22nd of December. The authors would later express their surprise that management made few changes to their draft during the review process. Brennan orders publication of substandard reporting. That's on the 9th of December. Acting on President Obama's orders, the director of the CIA, Brennan, directed a full review and publication of raw human intel information that had been collected before the election. CIA officers said that some of this information had been held on the orders of the director of the CIA, while others reporting had been judged by experienced CIA officers to have not met longstanding publication standards. Some of the latter was unclear or from unknown subsources, but would nonetheless be published after the election over the objection of veteran officers on orders that the director of the CIA and cited in the ICA to support claims that Putin aspired to help Trump win. So that's pretty crazy stuff, I guess. On the 5th of January, the most sensitive classified version of this assessment was briefed to the president and shared with about 250 administration officials and policymakers. On the 6th of January, the ICA was briefed to President-elect Trump, and the unclassified version was posted on the DNI website. The unclassified key judgments were identical to the classified versions. Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for Trump and aspired to help Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton. That's what we got on this thing. That was the last part.
I just wonder what Trump said when he was briefed on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean Putin likes me? Oh, good.
So the reason we just spent a long time, hour and 20 minutes on that, something like that. Mm-hmm. Is that what we spent so far?
Just about somewhere around there.
Is that what they call the key judgments in this thing, like we said at the beginning, are very, very important. Even if they can say that the hacking did not change any vote totals, that's not why Trump won. Or if they can say that, sure, they made memes, bot farms, stuff like that, but they only got viewed by this many people, and there's no way that they affected the outcome of the election. The overall narrative that Russia was doing what they could to try and help Trump win the election, it makes you think a thing about Trump, that he is, why would he be Russia's preferred candidate? You know, is he working with Russia? What is he going to do in order to favor them? Well, he must be super anti-democratic because Russia's anti-democratic. He must be a dictator like Putin is. It's affected the entire narrative of Trump. I mean, you'll still hear this. I still think it led to maybe even the Russia-Ukraine war starting, not just our involvement in spending all that money on that war. It's a really, really big deal. It probably led to the first impeachment of Trump over the Ukraine phone call. But of course, well, it's terrible. Trump, this Russian plant is trying to withhold weapons from Ukraine. Of course he is, because he's working for Russia. And so it affected the whole thing, everything. And people still say it all the time. And the most important thing from this that people need to remember, that I hope everyone takes away, well, I'm so blown away that they released this, even though most people aren't going to read it. Don't trust the government. Ever.
You can't.
I mean, they've got all this.
Not to mention all the while, you had the previous administration's vice president's son sitting on the board of a gas company in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we have declassified information showing that there was bribery to usurp the democratically elected president in Ukraine to install someone else who was going to go along with what the previous administration wanted. All the while, they're trying to pin fake things on a president. So imagine what they can do to you.
That'll be easy
if they're willing to do this to the president of the United States, to the incoming president.
Prosecutors do this all the time.
All
they
the
presented
time.
one side of the evidence and omitted all the other.
And they fight like hell to keep the exculpatory evidence out of the courtroom.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Every once in a while they get found on it, but the point is not just exculpatory evidence here. Like, there was more evidence against what the narrative was than there was evidence in favor of the narrative. There was one sentence that they said 5 people could have read 5 ways that is the basis of
Not
the
even
entire
a sentence.
idea.
It
Not even
wasn't-
a part of a sentence.
Yes.
It's like 3 words in a sentence. And that was it. And there are many other ways to explain it. And instead, they decided to ignore all of the other actual evidence they had that Russia actually was hoping that Clinton was going to win the election. So this just, what really blew my mind was, I had heard someone mention, I heard Matt Taibbi talk about this a little bit. And I remember that yesterday, we said this when we were talking about the first Tulsi release last Friday. We're like, okay, they didn't hack anything. The media clearly ran with that and lied about it. We know that. But, we still know that Russia was trying to help Trump get elected. Why is that? Like, we still believe this as of yesterday. We'll just come out and admit that. It makes sense for Russia to want a certain person to win over another person. It really never made sense that Trump was working for Russia, considering they didn't invade anywhere while he was the president. He didn't sign off on the Nord Stream gas pipeline. In fact, he was scolding people for doing the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. It was Biden that signed over on that. They invaded, took Crimea while Obama was president. They invaded Ukraine while Biden was president. There's like no evidence. Trump put damaging sanctions on Russia. There was no evidence that he was ever doing any of the bidding of Russia at all.
Ever. Not once.
In fact, he's been like one of the toughest people on Russia that we've had in quite a while. So I don't know. It's the reason I want to bring this up is don't trust the fucking government.
It's so wild.
Ever. Don't trust them. The media either. They'll easily run with all this stuff. Don't trust them. They can't have this kind of power. And that's why it's so important and for White Pill Wednesday to bring this up right now. Because the government, the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard just released a really big example of why you just can't trust the intelligence agencies. And if they did it, this is something that it should have taken 50 years to get released, by the way. If they did it just recently, like 8 years ago, or however long ago it was, well, what other kind of stuff y'all think's been going on?
Yeah.
Think there's other stuff? Yeah, there's other stuff.
There's definitely other stuff. And the question is, what do you do about it? I hope, here's my hope, my prayer, really, if you want to call it that this is Trump's obviously last term, and in year 4, he just declassifies a whole bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Like, you want to know what it's really like? You want to know what government's really like?
You want to know what is and what isn't?
Yeah.
That'd be good. Yeah.
You do the math. Probably won't happen, but
no, it's probably not going to happen.
Man, we would have an America full of libertarians if that were the case.
That's how I became a libertarian, is when I found out that you couldn't trust what these people in power were telling you.
Your eyes are open.
It leads you to the only plausible explanation. The only answer is that they can't have this much power. You can't trust these people. And so when you find out that you can't trust these people no matter who they are, you will eventually go down the road of you cannot give them this power. They can't have this power over your life. And that's where I hope a lot of people eventually get down to.
The power needs to be stripped.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, if you all enjoyed today's episode and breakdown.